The place where we really get into it, where we really start to dive into this issue of unrest particularly. Why are we so exhausted? Why is there this ever-present thing that happens within people where they're just so tired, despite the fact that rest is so constantly and faithfully presented to us? Comes in Hebrews chapter 3. Really, Hebrews chapter 3 and 4. If you want to get into chapter 4, come to Bible study today, because we're going to talk about that during Bible study time today. But we're going to take a close look right now at the entire chapter of Hebrews chapter 3. And this is how the message will work. We're going to talk through this whole chapter. It's a fascinating piece of literature. It's a powerful argument that the writer to the Hebrews is making, just to give us a little bit of context here, depending on how familiar you are with the book of Hebrews. We don't know who wrote this book of the Bible. It's a letter, and it was written to people with a Jewish background, to the Hebrew people, to people who had some kind of history where they would connect themselves to the Old Testament people, where they would say, that's my story, that's my heritage, that's where I came from. So all the laws and rules and historical stories and the stories of Moses and Isaiah and David and all that stuff, like these are the people who would claim that. They'd say, this is us, this is my story. And those people are a pretty unique audience, and so there's an entire book of the New Testament, an entire letter in the New Testament that's written to them to help them understand their place in this new story that is about Jesus and the change that Jesus means to the way that the whole universe kind of works. It's a really interesting letter, but it makes a lot of assumptions. It assumes that you are a Hebrew because it's written to those kind of people. And it assumes that you know all that history, that you would claim that history. And sometimes we do, and sometimes we don't. Like if you grew up going to Sunday school, maybe you know some of those stories. If church is a newer thing to you, if the Bible's a newer thing to you, you don't. So if you get into the book of Hebrews, if you start to read it, there are some times where you're just like, what in the world is he talking about? What is he possibly referring to? But it's really, really good stuff as this writer puts this together very densely for these people. And I want to walk you through one chapter of it here. So here we go. Hebrews chapter 3, starting at verse 1. It's on page 8 if you'd like to follow along. It starts with the word, therefore. You guys know the rule, the Bible rule? What do you do when you come to the word therefore? You ask, what's it there for? Why is the word therefore here? Well, it's because in chapters 1 and 2, this writer has described two true things about the Hebrew people. Thing number one, they are special. They are a unique people in all of history. And number two, they are called to be that. They were chosen. God picked Abraham. He picked this group of people. And that's important to start with. It's the way that the author kind of legitimizes them and says, hey, the fact that you equate yourself with all these stories, that's fair. It's legitimate. It's okay. You are special. You are called. Therefore, what do we do? Chapter 3. Therefore, holy brothers and sisters, he writes, who share in the heavenly calling, fix your thoughts on Jesus, whom we acknowledge as our apostle and high priest. Now, these are words that they were familiar with and would understand. An apostle is somebody who is sent. That's what that word means. So if you see someone called an apostle, it means that they are sent. So they go out. And a high priest is someone who goes kind of the other way with God. So if Jesus sends out the apostles to the nations to preach to them, the high priest is the person that the people send to God to go talk to God. So the Jewish people had their high priest, and that high priest would go to the Holy of Holy Place and meet with God and talk to God, and then would come back and report to the people. So if Jesus is both the apostle and the high priest, he's the entire kit and caboodle. He is the one who gets to talk to God and the one who gets sent to go speak. So they should rely on him. Put your faith in this person. Fix your thoughts on this person. He is our apostle and high priest. Verse 2. He, Jesus, was faithful to the one who appointed him, just as Moses was faithful in all God's house. So you called people pay attention to Jesus, and you should do that because he's a little bit like Moses. Now, the Hebrews liked Moses. They liked to claim Moses and to say we are the people who follow after Moses. There's really no single person, no single figure that has a more dominant place in the Old Testament than Moses. This is like George Washington, maybe, for Americans, right? Like who is the single most connected person? Like we point to this person as the ultimate. That's Moses to them. And this phrase that you caught here about Moses, that he was faithful in all of God's house, is actually a reference to a very specific story about Moses. Not long after Moses, played then by Charlton Heston, came down from Mount Sinai holding the stone tablet. That's a reference that like 2 people got. You know the movie The Ten Commandments? Okay. It's an old movie, but Charlton Heston played Moses. As he comes down and he brings the Ten Commandments, they're kind of establishing the Israelite people at this time. And it's clear that Moses is significant and special in his own right. But his right and left-hand people, Miriam and Aaron, his brother, they kind of get jealous of Moses, and they start saying, hold on, we deserve as much credit as Moses. We speak on behalf of God to the people. We lead the people too. We've gone through it as well. And it causes some real disunity. And so God says, you 3, come here. And he sets them aside, and he comes down kind of in like a cloud over them, Moses and Aaron and Miriam. And we don't really know what happened inside the special holy cloud of God, but once the cloud goes up, Miriam has leprosy, which is not good. It's a way of saying, hey, no, you're not correct about this. Moses is significant. He does have a very special place. And she and Aaron both accept this, and all the people, of course, do as well after that. And the reason that Moses is special, the thing God says about him in that story, is that Moses is faithful in all of God's house. So he's like the best kind of servant. He gets the key to every room. There is no space in the house that is not a thing for him to take care of. And Jesus is like that, this writer is saying. That Jesus is faithful just like Moses is faithful in all of God's house. Verse 3, Jesus has actually been found worthy of greater honor than Moses, just as the builder of a house has greater honor than the house itself, for every house is built by someone, but God is the builder of everything. So if Moses gets a key, Jesus is getting the deed. It's a big deal. And for the Hebrew people, for whom Moses was everything, the be-all, end-all, to have Jesus be placed above that, it's frankly scandalous. It's quite a challenging idea for them. And there's a reason that this writer is taking them in this direction. We're going to see it in a second. Verse 5, Moses was faithful as a servant in all God's house, bearing witness to what would be spoken by God in the future, but Christ is faithful as the Son over God's house. And we are his house, if indeed we hold firmly to our confidence and the hope in which we glory. Moses is special. He gets a key to the whole house, and he gets to take care of the whole thing. Christ is special. He owns the whole house. He gets to be the one who holds and has this very special thing. But what's interesting is they're both special because of you. They're both special because you are the house that they care for. You are the house in which Christ dwells. You are the house in which he finds belonging. It's amazing to be put in this position. It's incredible to have this kind of promise delivered to you. You are the house of Christ in which he longs to dwell and find belonging. That should be uplifting. It should be comforting. It should feel pretty good to have that kind of a promise given to you. And so, the writer goes on. Verse 7. So as the Spirit says, today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as you did in the rebellion during the time of testing in the wilderness, where your ancestors tested and tried me, though for 40 years they saw what I did. That is why I, that's God being the I there, that's why I, God, was angry with that generation, and I said, their hearts are always going astray. They have not known my ways. And so I declared on oath in my anger, they shall never enter my rest. This is the story that they really know. The Hebrew listener to this text would hear that story and think of one of the most shameful moments in their people's history. Maybe you know the story too. After they get led out of Egypt and God does all those incredible miracles to get Pharaoh to let them free from Egypt, and after they get to the Red Sea and they don't know how they're going to get across, and God does the incredible miracle of parting the sea so that all those million people can walk through it, and then they get to the Mount Sinai and God's glory comes down on the mountain, and it's big and it's loud and it's frankly scary. They are scared to death of seeing the glory of God beyond that mountain. After all that happens, and he comes to them and he says, "You are my people and I will be your God," he leads them all the way to the border of the Promised Land. And they get there and they send a couple spies into the Promised Land, and the spies go in and they take a look at this place and they say, "It's great. It's incredible. They can grow huge grapes. They can grow everything. It's a land truly flowing with milk and honey." Now the thing about that is also the people there who eat those grapes and drink that milk and honey, huge. They're very strong. The spies come back with this report, and the people, the Israelites, who have seen God part the sea, who have seen God shake a mountain to its core, who have seen God put plagues upon the greatest nation in the world, on Egypt, to the extent that its leader has to get on his knees, those people hear about these big folks in the Promised Land, and they freak out. And they have no faith at all. And they're desperate and they're scared and they say, "We can't go in there. We can't possibly do it." And God says, "What do I have to do? How am I going to explain to you people how powerful I am after all I've already done?" And so he says, "You will not enter my rest. I'm still going to give you guys the Promised Land. Your people will have the Promised Land, but not this group, not this generation. You're going to wander in the desert for 40 years. This whole generation is going to die off. And then I will give you the Promised Land." That's the story. Every single Hebrew person who would read this text, who would read this letter, would know that story and would know that shameful piece of their history. It's bad. It's rough. It's also not remotely unique to the Jewish people. It is hardly something that only this particular ethnic group has had as their problem. You can look at every single nation, every single people, every single individual person who has ever lived has been promised by an almighty and everlasting God that there is rest for them. And he wants them to have it, and he wants them to crawl up into his arms and enjoy it. And they have had many, many moments in their lives where they've said, "No, thank you, I have things to do." And they go run around like chickens with their heads cut off, asking, "How can I make it all better? Why am I so tired all the time? What can I possibly do to feel good?" And the whole time, he's faithfully saying, "I've got the rest. It's right here. You can just come to me, all you who are weary and burdened. I will give you rest." Every single people, every single person can relate to this story. And this is why the writer to the Hebrews wants to bring it up, so that he can then go on with these words. Verse 12. "See to it, brothers and sisters, that none of you has a sinful, unbelieving heart that turns away from the living God. But encourage one another daily, as long as it is called today, so that none of you may be hardened by sin's deceitfulness." I have an 8-year-old son, which means that I listen to 8-year-old jokes. Those are the kind of jokes that I get told at the breakfast table. And if I ask my son, "Buddy, do you know what day it is?" 9 times out of 10, the answer I'm going to receive is, "It's today." Because he knows he's not wrong, and he knows I can't tell him it's not today, because it's definitely today. But he also knows that's not the answer I want. I want him to say it's Tuesday, or Wednesday, or whatever actual day of the week it actually is. And he thinks it's super funny. And it kind of is. The thing about today, the thing about this very simple statement, is that it is always going to be able to be called today. This is actually a remarkably sort of relevant statement in our current moment of pop psychology. In our current moment of pop psychology in the US, there is a lot of conversation about the idea of being present in the present moment and taking advantage of this heartbeat, because this is the only heartbeat you have. You don't have the past one, you don't have the future one, you only have this one that is right now. You only have this today moment. You only have right here. So as long as it is this, not the past, not the future, as long as it is now, encourage one another to take advantage of the promise that God has given you of comfort and rest in his arms. This is what the writer is suggesting. And they're not thinking about past and future thoughts. They go on to say, we have come to share in Christ if indeed we hold our original conviction firmly to the very end. That's the past, our original conviction, and that's the future to the very end. And we can only hold our original conviction about the love of God into the very end if we do it right now, each moment of our lives, each heartbeat that we have. We are offered this rest here and now, and we are encouraged to hold it. Verse 15, as has just been said, today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as you did in the rebellion. Who were they who heard and rebelled? Were they not all those Moses led out of Egypt? And with whom was he angry for 40 years? Was it not with those who sinned, whose bodies perished in the wilderness? Just to be clear, how did they sin? They didn't trust that God could bring them in to the promised land. Verse 18, and to whom did God swear that they would never enter his rest, if not to those who disobeyed? So we see that they were not able to enter because of their unbelief. It's an interesting thing that happens, that when you talk about a thing like the Sabbath, you end up talking about a commandment, right? This is one of the commandments that is carried down on the stone tablets that if you go through catechism class, you memorize its meaning. If you spend really any time at all remotely adjacent to Christianity, you don't even have to be one. Christians are all about these 10 commandments. They talk about them constantly. They want to put them on every wall and every place they can. It comes up quite a lot. But when you start talking about a commandment, you end up talking about the idea of being obedient, of a certain kind of behavior, of what a person does do and doesn't do. And I think that's a real bummer in this particular situation, because the Sabbath idea is not about behavior. The Sabbath idea is not about doing an action of obedience in the same way that, like, the fifth commandment, do not murder, is about obedience. That's really just saying, like, don't take a specific action, don't kill somebody, do take a specific action, take care of other people. Like, that's about a behavior, the fifth commandment. But the Sabbath idea isn't really about a behavior. It's actually about a non-behavior. It's about not doing something. It's about not taking an action at all. It's about receiving something. The Sabbath idea says to you, I know there's a lot going on, but you need to rest. Stop. Stop thinking you have to always be doing it, and trust instead. The Sabbath idea is not about behavior. The Sabbath idea is about faith. If it's asking you a question, it's asking you the question, do you trust God enough to think that there's Sabbath for you, or don't you? Do you trust God enough to believe that when he promises that you can rest and it will be okay, that you can rest and it will be okay? Or don't you? It's not a question of what you do or don't do. It's not like I can determine your connection with Sabbath by watching a video of your actions throughout the week. It's a heart issue. It's a faith thing. So important, then, that the writer uses the words that they use at the end of verse 19. See, so we see they were not able to enter because of their unbelief. It was a problem of faith, of what was happening inside their heart. And that leads us to our second therefore of this text. Guys, we got two of them out of this. It's amazing. Chapter 4, verse 1 says, "Therefore, since the promise of entering his rest still stands, let us be careful that none of you be found to have fallen short of it." Falling short of this promise does not look like failing to go to church. It does not look like forgetting to do a daily devotion. It does not look like not reading your Bible on a regular basis. Falling short of a promise is about believing or not believing in that promise. That's it. All that you can do with the promise is accept or reject the promise. And so I say to you that your God has made a promise to you, that you really can rest, even though the world is crazy all the time, and even though there are a lot of things to do, and even though a lot of it feels like an uphill battle, you have a tender God who has sought you out and knelt before you and held your hands and said, "It's okay. You can breathe. You can rest. I have you. I love you. I will always be faithful to you. Do you believe me?" And then you can fall into his arms, and it'll be all right. And yes, you'll need to get up again. And yes, you'll need to do more things in the future. You always will, until you enter an eternal version of rest that we can look forward to. But for now, my friends, my brothers, my sisters, I promise, because God promises, that there is rest for you. There is rest for your souls. And perhaps just as importantly, if not more importantly, there is a big group of people all around you each day who don't know this, who are really getting tired and are really feeling exhausted, and they're angry and they're frustrated and they're downtrodden and they're so weary, and they don't have any voice out there that's saying to them, you can have rest. Every voice out there, every self-help book is saying you just got to try a little bit harder. You just got to make a little bit better decisions. You just got to have a little bit better behavior. But you can be a different voice for them. You can offer them rest. You can speak these promises and ask them to consider trusting in them, because goodness knows all the rest of it isn't working. We are so restless and so filled with unrest all around us all the time. May you be the same thing that the writer to the Hebrews is, a voice of invitation to find rest in the beautiful promise of a loving God. Amen.